We should have known it wouldn't be that easy. A story by Ethan and Madison. Chapter 1. The Dream Home. The moment we signed the last piece of paperwork and got the keys, we felt like we were on top of the world. In the middle of 2020, while everything else seemed to be crumbling, we had managed to do what so many people our age struggled to accomplish. We bought our first home. It was a charming little house, nothing extravagant, but to us, it was perfect. The backyard was what really sold us. There was an in-ground pool, an actual pool, not just some above-ground thing we had to assemble every summer. The idea of swimming in our own backyard, hosting barbecues, and having friends over for late-night swims felt like a dream. We had spent our entire relationship bouncing between apartments, always dealing with shared walls, thin ceilings, and landlords who barely fixed anything. Now, we had a place that was ours. Moving in was an adventure in itself. We spent the first night on an air mattress in the living room, eating takeout by candlelight because we hadn't set up the electricity yet. We laughed at how unprepared we were, but neither of us cared. The excitement of finally being homeowners overshadowed any small inconvenience. But as we settled in, we started noticing little things about the neighborhood, specifically the fences. Every house had the same aging, rusted chain-link fence. It was functional, sure, but it didn't exactly scream privacy. At first, it wasn't a huge concern, but then we installed a hot tub. The first night we sat in it, surrounded by bubbles and warm water, we realized something. We were on full display. The neighboring houses were just a few feet away, and with their chain-link fences, there was nothing stopping them from seeing straight into our yard. If someone really wanted to be nosy, all they had to do was step onto their back porch or lean against the fence. We weren't exactly doing anything scandalous, but we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Madison leaned back in the tub, staring at the sky. "You know," she said, "we should really do something about the fence." I nodded. "Yeah, I don't want to feel like we're in a fishbowl every time we're out here." That was the moment the idea took root. We had no idea that decision would set off a chain of events that would lead to the biggest fight of our lives. We should have known it wouldn't be that easy. Chapter 2. The Plan. Once we decided we needed more privacy, we got to work figuring out the best way to make it happen. The first step was checking the Homeowners Association, HOA, rules. We wanted to make sure we weren't violating any policies before moving forward. The guidelines were pretty straightforward. Fences could be up to 8 feet tall, and they could be made of chain-link PVC or wood. There was no mention of needing prior approval, except we wanted painted an unnatural color, like bright pink or neon green. Since we planned on using a natural wood finish, we assumed we were in the clear. Next, we started looking for contractors. We didn't want to build a fence ourselves and risk any mistakes, especially since we wanted it to be a long-term investment. After getting a few quotes, we hired a reputable company that had great reviews. When the contractor came out to inspect the property, he pointed out something we hadn't noticed before. The old chain-link fence, the one that had been there long before we moved in, wasn't actually on the property line, according to the official survey. It was a good 6 feet onto our land. In other words, the fence had been in the wrong spot for years. Legally, that strip of land belonged to us. The contractor assured us that this wasn't uncommon. Over time, property lines get blurred, especially in older neighborhoods. He explained that we had every right to reclaim our full property. With our approval, he pulled the proper permits, tore down the old fence, and built a brand new wooden one exactly where it was supposed to be, just a foot inside our actual property line. When it was finished, the transformation was incredible. Our backyard finally felt like ours. No more chain-link eyesores. No more feeling like we were on display. Just a beautiful, solid wooden fence that gave us the privacy we wanted. We felt great about the decision. That is, until Robert showed up. Chapter 3. The Confrontation. Then came Robert. Robert had lived next door for over 30 years. He was in his early 50s, graying at the temples, and had that old school, "I've been here longer than you" attitude. We hadn't interacted much before, just a casual nod here and there. But the moment the new fence went up, that all changed. The first time he knocked on our door, there was no friendly greeting, no introduction, just anger. "You stole my land," he shouted the second I opened the door. I blinked, momentarily stunned. "Excuse me?" Madison, who had been standing behind me, shifted uncomfortably. We exchanged a quick glance. Neither of us had expected this. "That fence," Robert continued, jabbing a finger toward our backyard. "That was the property line. You moved it." I took a slow breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "No, Robert. The original fence wasn't on the actual property line. We had a survey done. The old fence was 6 feet into our yard. Legally, this is our land. He wasn't having it. That fence has been there since before you even thought about moving in. Just because you put up some fancy wooden thing doesn't mean you can take my property." We tried to explain about the survey, the permits, the contractor's findings, but he refused to listen. His face turned red as he jabbed his finger in the air, his voice rising with every word. "This is theft. I should call the cops on you." And that's exactly what he did. An hour later, 2 police officers showed up at our door. "Sir, this is a civil matter," one of them told Robert after listening to both sides. "If you believe the fence is on your property, you'll need to take it up in court." Robert's face twisted in fury. "So you're not going to do anything?" The officer gave him a level look. "Sir, they have the proper permits. They followed legal procedures. There's nothing criminal here." That didn't sit well with Robert. As the police left, he turned back to us, his jaw clenched. "This isn't over." And unfortunately, he meant it. Chapter 4, The HOA's Dirty Tricks. Robert wasn't done. After failing with the police, he went to the one place where he knew he had power, the HOA. The Homeowners Association had always been something we were aware of but never paid much attention to. The rules were mostly about lawn maintenance, trash pickup schedules, and making sure houses weren't painted neon green. Nothing in the original paperwork we received said anything about needing permission for a standard wooden fence. But Robert had an advantage we didn't know about. He was best friends with the HOA president. Her name was Linda, and from the moment she got involved, it became clear that this wasn't about rules. It was about control. The first letter arrived in the mail a week later. Violation notice. Unapproved fence installation. According to them, we had broken the rules by failing to get HOA approval before installing our fence. The penalty? A hefty fine of $500, with an additional $100 added for every week we didn't comply. At first, we thought it was some kind of mistake. Madison pulled out the HOA handbook we had received when we moved in. There it was in black and white. Fences could be up to 8 feet tall, and as long as they were chain-link PVC or wood in a natural finish, no prior approval was needed. So we wrote back, attaching a copy of the original rules. Their response came fast. "Please refer to the updated HOA guidelines." Updated? That was news to us. Linda attached a copy of the new rules, which, conveniently, required HOA approval for any fence, regardless of material or height. The date on the document? It was from this year, months after we had already built the fence. "That's not how rules work," Madison said, shaking her head. "They can't just make stuff up after the fact." But they could try. Over the next few weeks, the fines kept piling up. Then came the threats. Letters saying we could have a lien placed on our home if we didn't comply. And Robert? He was loving every second of it. Every time we stepped outside, he made sure to remind us. "Should have just left the old fence alone," he sneered one afternoon while watering his lawn. "Would have saved yourself a lot of trouble." But we weren't about to back down. Not now. Not ever. Chapter 5, The Chainsaw Incident. It started with the sound of a motor, a low mechanical growl, rising and falling in pitch. At first, we thought it was a neighbor trimming their trees, but something about the noise sent a chill up my spine. Then Madison's voice cut through my thoughts. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her brow furrowed. We both looked at each other, then rushed outside. And that's when we saw them. Robert, standing at property line, a chainsaw roaring in his hands. And right next to him, smirking like she had just won the neighborhood lottery, was Linda, the HOA president. We barely had time to process what was happening before we saw the first section of our brand new wooden fence crash to the ground. They were cutting it down. Madison screamed, "What the hell are you doing?" Robert barely looked up, raising his voice over the chainsaw. "Fixing your mistake." Linda, arms crossed over her chest, nodded in agreement. "Your fence is in violation of HOA rules. We're taking it down." I felt my hands clench into fists. "You can't do this." But Robert just grinned. "Watch me." Another section of the fence wobbled, then splintered apart as the chainsaw blade chewed through it. The smell of fresh cut would fill the air. Madison had already pulled out her phone, dialing 911. "They're destroying our property," she yelled into the receiver. The dispatcher asked if anyone was in immediate danger. Madison glanced at Robert, who was looking way too comfortable holding that chainsaw. "Not yet," she muttered. "But I don't want to wait until someone is." The sound of sirens in the distance was the only thing that made Robert pause. He stepped back, lowering the chainsaw but keeping it running, as if daring us to do something. Linda's smirk faltered just a little. "We're within our rights," she said, though the confidence in her voice wavered. By the time the police arrived, 3 sections of our fence were already on the ground, a pile of sawdust and broken wood lying at Robert's feet. The officers separated us immediately. Speaking to Robert first, he gestured wildly at the fallen fence, ranting about illegal structures and encroachments and how he was just doing what the HOA had the right to do. Then they talked to us. Madison was still shaking with rage. "We have permits. We have proof. They just destroyed our fence." The officers took their time reviewing the paperwork, and then, finally, one of them turned back to Robert. "You had no legal right to do this," the officer said flatly. Robert's grin vanished. Linda scoffed, stepping forward. "The HOA has jurisdiction." "No, it doesn't," the officer cut in. "Not in this case." Robert was charged with destruction of property. Linda wasn't off the hook either. The police took a full report documenting her involvement. The best part? The whole thing had been recorded on Madison's phone. As Robert was led away, he turned to us with a sneer. "This isn't over." But we knew it was, because now we had everything we needed to take this fight to the next level. Chapter 6, The Legal Battle. The moment the police confirmed that Robert and the HOA had no legal right to destroy our fence, we knew we had to take the next step. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about justice. We hired an attorney, not just any attorney, but one who specialized in HOA disputes and property rights. After hearing our story and reviewing the evidence, he gave a slow nod. "You have a strong case," he said. "And based on what I'm seeing here, they're in a lot more trouble than they think." That was exactly what we needed to hear. The lawsuit was filed within a week. We were suing for destruction of property, harassment, and emotional distress. On top of that, we filed an injunction against the HOA to prevent them from issuing any more fraudulent fines. The court date was set, and the waiting game began. But Robert and the HOA weren't done playing dirty. A few days after the lawsuit was filed, we started receiving anonymous complaints. Petty things like claims that our grass was half an inch too tall, that our trash cans weren't brought in quickly enough, that our front porch light was too bright at night. Then came the letters. Hand-delivered envelopes with no return address, slipped under our door in the dead of night. They were filled with vague threats, typed in all caps. "You won't win. This neighborhood doesn't belong to you. We'll make your life hell." We knew exactly who was behind it, but without proof, all we could do was document every incident and hand it over to our lawyer. The day of the trial finally arrived. In court, we presented everything: the property survey, the fence permits, the video footage of Robert destroying the fence with his chainsaw, and even the original HOA guidelines we received when we moved in. The judge examined every piece of evidence carefully, her expression unreadable. Then it was the HOA's turn. Their argument? That they had the authority to remove non-compliant structures, and that we had never sought proper approval. Our lawyer stood up, flipping through the HOA's own rules. "Can you point to any clause in this document that states the homeowners needed approval for a natural wood fence under 8 feet tall?" Silence. The HOA president fumbled through her copy of the rules, her face turning red. "Well, the rules were updated recently," she mumbled. The judge raised an eyebrow. And when were they updated? After their fence was built, she admitted, barely above a whisper. That was it. The judge had heard enough. Her ruling was swift and brutal. Robert and the HOA were found liable for the full cost of the fence, legal fees, and additional damages. But the kicker? The judge tacked on punitive damages due to the harassment we endured. The total amount was staggering. It wasn't just enough to cover the fence. It was enough to wipe out our mortgage. As we left the courtroom, Robert stormed past us, his face twisted with fury. The HOA president didn't say a word, just looked down at the floor as she shuffled out behind him. We had won, but the battle wasn't over yet, because now the entire neighborhood was watching. Chapter 7, The Sweet Victory. Winning in court felt incredible, but the true victory came in the months that followed. With the damages awarded by the court, we had more than enough to rebuild the fence, stronger and taller than before. But that wasn't all. After settling everything, we realized something astonishing. The payout had completely wiped out our mortgage. No more house payments. For the first time in our lives, we were completely debt-free. With the extra money, we decided to take things a step further. We paid off our car loans, wiped out our remaining student debt, and even started investing. Every dollar that would have gone to a mortgage or a car payment now went straight into our future. And as for Robert and the HOA president, they disappeared. There was no big moving day, no farewell from the neighborhood. One day, their houses were occupied, the next empty. Whether they moved out of shame or sheer embarrassment, we didn't care. They were gone, and that was enough. The HOA, now under new leadership, mysteriously stopped bothering us. The fines vanished. The updated rules were quietly removed. It was almost as if they had never existed in the first place. One evening, as we relaxed in our hot tub under the soft glow of the backyard lights, we took a moment to take it all in. No more prying eyes. No more ridiculous fines. No more stress. Just peace. We raised our glasses in a silent toast to standing our ground, to fighting back, and to proving that sometimes doing the right thing does pay off. And most importantly, to finally, truly enjoying a home we had fought so hard to protect. Thanks for watching our video on the dark side of HOAs. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more eye-opening content. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. And as always, we value your thoughts and experiences. So drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and remember, sometimes the best way to win is to stay out of the HOA game.